Roman was the oldest of 3 sons, and Roman was the light of our family and so deeply loved his family, and just always wanted everyone to be able to drop everything and be a part of his adventures. You know, looking back, all the times I said, I need 2 adults, I need to make dinner or clean the house or do this paperwork, take care of things, and he always just wanted me to drop things and be a part of his next adventure. And that's something I've learned a lot from that really all the everyday chores that need to get done can wait. Growing up, one of his first sports was being involved in a circus school in Minnesota. So he did everything from riding a regular unicycle to like a really big giraffe unicycle. You know, that was all really exciting for him because it was different. Like, he didn't want to just do what everyone else was doing. Hopping trains was a big thing his last probably 4 years of life as well. That's another piece of the perfect storm that led to his suicide, is that he was, for the first time ever, after hopping trains for 4 or 5 years, he was thrown from a train and had a head injury. He didn't go in and get it looked at, and I didn't find out until the last 2 or 3 weeks of his life that had happened, and I think that played a part in him going into psychosis. We'll never know how much of a part, but yeah, he was thrown from a moving train and landed on the side of his head. He did go into the emergency room just, I guess actually the night before he took his life, and that was one of the things he was going to have looked at. He was going to try to see if they could do an MRI, and I was trying to speak with the hospital over the phone, and they would not listen to me or give me any information because he was 21. And I was trying to explain to them that he was in some type of psychosis, and it took everything within him to get to the hospital because he decided he needed help, and to please not let him leave. And they said there was nothing that they could do, and they could not relate the information because he was an adult. And while he was in triage and they were getting machines set up to look at to do a brain scan, he left. I'm sure just sitting alone in that room, he convinced himself either that, you know, someone was going to do something bad to him, or that he didn't deserve the help. That was the first and only time he went in to get help, and I was in Minnesota. He didn't have any support there with him. And so, knowing his state of mind at the time, I know how much he wanted to live because he got himself to the hospital. It was less than 24 hours later that he ended up back at that same hospital on life support after taking his life. I spent the first 5 months in bed, medicated. Really just trying to survive and not thinking I would. I tried to sleep as much as I could. When my kids would come home from school, I would try to be well put together, and I wasn't shy to grieve in front of them, but they certainly had no idea how much I was struggling. I don't know if I'll survive this. All I can do is like the best I can do right now. And right now I can tolerate all of this despair and anguish, but will I be able to forever? I have no idea.
Kevin and I were 3 grades apart, so about 2.5 years, I guess. He was older. Growing up, we weren't that close. He, preferred if I wasn't around. But that changed once we got older, and when he went off to college, I think he kind of found more of his comfort in life, and so he was more comfortable around me. But in our family, he was always the jokester. I don't know if my brother was ever comfortable in his own skin, but he made other people comfortable. The summer before he left of 2021, he had an episode where his wife called and was like, "Can you come? He's spiraling." And so I did, and so he and I spent a couple days solid together and had some really good talks and got really close, just talking about guilt and shame of the choices you make in life. We talked about the tethers in life. He chose in life not to have kids, but I kind of explained to him that those are tethers for me. That month before he left, we talked about that a lot. That you guys stick around. You gotta stick around, because you may not have this tether or that tether, but we are your tether. Almost exactly a year before he left, I said, if you were to ever leave us, he would not understand what it would do to us. I've had this place in my chest for my brother since I was about 17. That has always, it's where my worry was for him. He liked being challenged and he liked doing scary things, and I think that was a part of some of his ways he dealt with stuff. I couldn't sleep, I was just constantly anxious and worried because I kind of had a feeling. We talked, texted every day until about the last week, and he was pulling away. That morning, his house was clean. He had taken his dog to doggy daycare, and he was supposed to go to work, and he never showed up to work. And so I don't know if he just couldn't do it anymore, but he did have access to a firearm. What we've learned and talked about, that's usually a 5 to 10 minute moment for people, and he didn't make it through that moment. I was mad because I had talked to him, the summer before I had talked to him, the weeks leading up to this, it felt personal. I remember screaming, he did this to us. He did exactly what I was scared of. He did exactly what he said he wouldn't do. To this day, it still doesn't feel real yet. We miss him so much, but it's like, he's missing so much of our life and what his life could be. I do feel appreciative that he left a note, because that lets me know probably in that moment he was very set on what he was gonna do. And I do appreciate that there was some poeticness in it about being spread in beautiful places, because I have started doing that, and it has been very cathartic for me to do for him, because it helps me feel like I'm honoring him. But I also feel like him leaving my name, there was a lot of underlying meaning in that as well. At first I took it as a burden that he would do that, but now I see it as a honor, and I'm very grateful to have been one of his last thoughts as well.
It's okay to cry.
I won't stop if I start though.
My son's name's Zedrick Carby, Zedrick Allen Carby. And he, great kid, born in Austin, Texas, and decided to take his own life at the age of 19. One of my favorite moments, I was talking about that earlier, was Zed. We had a lot of friends over, and my friend Barry was there with her 2 golden retrievers. And at one point, Zed was sitting in an office type chair in the living room, and both golden retrievers jumped up in his lap. Now 2 full-grown golden retrievers are now sitting in his lap on an office chair. That's Zed. He definitely loved animals, and they loved him. He loved Stevie Ray Vaughan. I was a huge fan of Stevie Ray, and so we would listen to it in the car all the time. And the song would come on. Zed, who's this? And he'd go, that's that guy Stevie. He was really, really funny at times, and yet very angry at times. That was a struggle for us and for him. It was just tough. He couldn't hold it in. He'd yell and scream, and mostly his anger was involving not getting his way, not doing things he wanted to do. Typical, probably, kid issues for being angry. It would take him some time to calm down. He also wanted to have his own freedom a lot, and so he struggled with structure. He had good structure in his life. It was just torn between 2 homes. His mom and I were divorced, and he had good solid homes in both locations. Probably that's why he struggled with structure, because he had to go between 2 homes. It was, you know, 2008 when the big market crash. He couldn't find any work, and he was struggling, and so he decided on his own to join the Army. And he went down and applied, and was a week away from boot camp. He was supposed to go into boot camp middle of November, and this was the first week of November. He killed himself. One of the best meals that I can remember around that time was we went to have dinner, and Rianne was with us, and he told me about him signing up for the Army, and it was so incredible. I was so extremely happy, and he was happy, and Rianne was happy that he was going to go in a direction. Something happened between that moment and the moment he decided to take his life that he, you know, that it didn't work out for him. It totally blindsided me. So I don't know. It was a terrible day. For a while, I wasn't even really conscious. I was surviving, and I was living in some complete loss of any understanding of what was reality. I was just completely lost. You're in that place. You don't think the same. You don't have the mask on. You say things differently. You think things differently. You're at a complete loss as to what I would consider to be the normal human existence. My heart was torn apart, but yet open. It was receiving so much love from family and friends that it was just a out of the world or out of body type of experience, and that how can your heart be ripped apart and yet you're receiving all this love at the same time? And so through family and friends, you're able to survive these things.
I was a single mom from the time Adam was born, And I think he knew that, and so he was a very, very, very good baby. When he was a teenager, he was really, really, really into cars. He taught himself how to fix them. He bought his first car himself. It was an Audi A4 that didn't run. It needed a new fuel pump, and the fuel pump was in the gas tank. But he figured it all out himself from YouTube videos, and he ended up pulling that fuel pump out, getting it all fixed. And one night he called me on the phone, and I was out with friends or something, and he said, "Mom, guess what I'm doing?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "I'm driving my car." And I said, "Oh my God, I'm so proud of you. That's so awesome." And I said, "Now get home, you don't have insurance on that car." Adam's suicide was a big surprise to us. He had been living his best life in Germany. He'd been stationed there for about almost 2 years, and he'd been traveling all over, taking beautiful pictures of Norway and Germany. He married a girl from South Dakota, which was where we originally were from. They were married for about a year. She was just really lonely, and she had had a daughter back in South Dakota that she missed. She ended up moving back to the States. That really hit him hard, the divorce. He was just lonely in general. These were things that I knew about, but I didn't know that they were so serious. It was midnight on September 10th. I got down to the bottom of the stairs. I answered the door, and I saw that it was an army chaplain and another person in uniform. I opened the door and I said, "Oh fuck." And he said, "Are you Miss Henriksen?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Can I come in? We need to talk to you about something." And I knew exactly what it was. I just thought something had happened to him. I never thought he did something to himself. I knew I had to call my daughter and tell her. She was absolutely devastated. We just stayed on the phone the whole night, my daughter and I, and just talked and talked and talked about how we couldn't believe what was happening, and that this was our reality. So definitely in the beginning, I would say there was guilt, shame, anger, sadness. For me, the biggest feeling of guilt wasn't necessarily that I could have stopped him, or that I could have fixed it, or that I could have, helped him. I mean, because I could have done all of those things if I would have known. He just didn't share his feelings, and that's kind of the way Adam was in general. For me, the guilt had to do with, like, what did I do as a parent to him that made him feel like he couldn't have reached out to me, or made him feel like this was the only way out. It's interesting because I was angry at the world, the situation, myself, but I wasn't angry at him. I had nothing but love and compassion and empathy, and just wanted to take all that pain away for him.
Emily was the youngest of my 3 daughters. They were close, and there was this tribe, each of them with very distinct, unique personalities, and her sisters taught her a lot. She matured kind of at a young age. She was really handy with horses. She was a skilled rider and competed successfully in rodeo. Her best event was barrels, and she could really ride what they call pole bending. There's also something called goat tying, and that's kind of a lot of fun. Emily had a bad accident one time. She was in a gangly phase and tumbled when she came off. Right then the horse crow hopped a little bit, which meant he kind of kicked. and it caught her in the head. She was unconscious and convulsing in a busy, crowded arena, and we wound up flying her to Denver. That was a really hard day. She was all right though. There was a fracture, no hearing loss, she broke her clavicle. It was only about 2 weeks before she rode again, and pulled her arm out of a sling, made a run, and made a check. I think, Anthony, her great attribute, the one I thought that was so unique and different, was that she could express her feelings well. She could tell you how she felt, which not many people can do. And I enjoyed that about her. She was very reflective and empathetic. She understood feelings and picked up on what other people were feeling and could process it and come back with it too. She was 16 when this started to manifest, which is early onset. I remember an exchange, and she was a little agitated and kind of gave me a little tirade, and it was so jostled and disconnected. I just stood there and I thought, this is different. She's not just mad. There's something different about this. And I took her to the docs. It trended through her senior year of high school and got pretty strange. As a parent, without an advanced degree in psychoanalytics, I don't feel like I missed anything. I feel like I was seeing it and responding most of the time with decent timing.
Did she go through depressive episodes?
Yeah, she did. She did. It's hard to see, because she was a bright, shiny person, and then find out what's going on. What is this? Where'd this come from? What happened? Nothing. And it surprised her too. And this is the thing, you have no control over this. How your mood swings. You wake up one way and you go to bed another. And what happened? Why do I feel this? And that really, for Emily, that became the problem. I think she understood she had an illness, so she didn't take it as a failure. Looking at life when you're 22, she died when she was 22, with this handicap of a brain that has become unreliable. You can't trust it. That is really what made her scared. I remember starting at meetings, and I could barely stop crying. A person who was a little bit seasoned, she said something and then she smiled a little bit, mentioning her son who's deceased and who had killed himself. I was shocked. I was just shocked. I still remember this, thinking, how can she do that? But now I'm that person.
How did you handle that?
Yeah, thanks.
The feeling of the judgment,
Yeah.
that feeling within yourself, because that's part of this loss. Is it comes with a guilt that no other
Right.
loss has.
It can come with guilt. I refused that opportunity. I had set my life aside. I ran to help Emily on a couple of times. I rented an apartment after the hospital. There was an attempt and about 1 month hospital stay, and I had an apartment ready when she came out, because I knew she was gonna. She was on a ventilator, and I was sure she was gonna come out. I got to a college town in September and rented an apartment and stayed there for 8 months. And got her back on her feet and properly medicated and engaged in school. And she did it. She stayed for 3 years until they changed her meds. My daughter's case, she made no mistakes. She didn't do anything wrong. She was afflicted with a serious mental illness through no fault of her own, and it ended her life.
I think initially I was very open about Roman's mental health and suicide and all kinds of things, like things that could have been done differently. And then all it takes is a couple of situations where maybe I shouldn't have said something because that person's reacting really weird now, and now I'm feeling vulnerable and like they're judging me. So I'm a little more cautious now about sharing. I know it changed me as a person, understanding something like suicide or depression or anxiety certainly is not a choice, but it's just really underestimated how debilitating it is.
Like, did I want to talk to my fresh 5-year-old and 8-year-old about suicide? No. Did it force me to do that? Yes. You know, nobody wants to talk about it. And that's what I want my kids and friends and other people to understand too, that it's not something that is just something you don't talk about. If you are struggling, you need to talk about it. You need to get it out there, because just to put it away is not healthy in any shape or form.
In our culture, we don't talk about these things. I can go to a party and if I had high blood pressure, perfectly acceptable to say my doctor put me on this new prescription, so I'm great because I have a really smart doctor. Somebody goes to a party and says, yeah, I'm on lithium. People say, what? They look at each other and they walk away. If you say, I'm depressed, people act like you have the plague and they don't know what to say. And as you know, if you say, I had a sibling, I had a friend who died of suicide, you do not know what to say. And even if you're on your knees, they walk away. And that, Anthony, is what makes this loss so different. Our culture doesn't have a means to respond. We don't include it in the discussion, and people are set aside. People may think, we'll be kind, you didn't protect your spouse. You didn't protect your child. This is your ultimate responsibility, and you must have failed.
Have you had that experience?
I felt some judgment. Yeah, sure. You know, your child killed themselves. What were you doing?
There's definitely a whole book you could write on other people's way of dealing with, especially suicide loss, that you have to tiptoe around them and their feelings and the way they treat you, especially because of the stigma and all the bullshit that comes with that. I wasn't going to deal with Adam, because my mom did that with my brother when my brother died by suicide, and I said I'm not going to have any of that guilt and shame and any of that involved with Adam's death. You know, no one would say what he actually died of. And then 10 years later, my mom said, well, it really was a tragedy what happened to Steve. And I was like, how did Steve die? And my mom was like, well, you know, the way he took his life. And I was like, what in the world? Like, I found out when I was 26 how he actually died.
I did not know how abundant this was until I was in the middle of it. And the reason why I didn't know is because nobody talks about it.
I knew that I needed to take the advice of my therapist and finally get on some medication to help with the depression and help with the deep mood swings. So that has been really life-changing for me. It allows me the space from anxiety and from depression, for the most part, to be able to find happiness in life. In January, I took up social dancing, and that has been just the best thing that's happened since losing Roman. I've really enjoyed meeting an entire new group of people. We call them our dance family, and it's been just amazing. It's been the one thing since losing Roman where I have had significant relief from grief.
some days I don't know how I've survived for 13 years. I survived because my daughter had my granddaughter just a month later on December 8th of 2010. And she's my angel. She saved me. How I dealt with the struggles was, by leaning on friends and, and family. My family was incredibly supportive. I had a good friend that really encouraged me to do EMDR and to help me with the trauma. There's no magic one thing. There's lots of things.
I felt like I had to ask Adam for forgiveness. The way I worked through that was by talking to Adam, and I felt like I needed answers from Adam. And so I had to find spirituality, because I didn't have that before. I was an angry atheist. I didn't believe anything happened after you died. I thought there was just death. So I started talking to him through these feathers that I had in this bottle. And I said, move these feathers for yes and these feathers for no. And I went through this whole guilt thing with him of clearing this guilt and shame that I had by saying, move these feathers for yes and no. And I got all my questions answered that way. And that's what saved me.
I used to come to our meetings and say, I want my life back. And that's been a goal. Through great effort, some luck, meeting people like you in our group has been very, very helpful. And I'd like to think that I'm on steady ground now.
You say you're on steady ground now. What are you doing now that keeps you on steady ground?
And really, it's one of the most basic things. But for me, this is taking care of myself physically, and that is just very basic exercise, getting decent rest, and maintaining a decent diet. Just physically taking care of myself. Emily is deceased, and I will never, ever change that. And so then it becomes an imperative to accept it, not fight against it, not feel that there's guilt. Guilt is dangerous stuff. Shame is even worse, and that affects a lot of people in our shoes that have lost a family member to suicide.
Four or 5 months after Zed took his life, I went to a counseling session that Heather was holding, and I went to it 2 or 3 times, and I found that it made things worse for me. So I found that going to that at that time was a struggle for me, and it probably is for others. But what I realized in going there is that there are others like me who were struggling and had dealt with this loss, and they were in this special club that nobody wants to be a part of. I look at what I've gained in going back to these group sessions. I feel like it's really helping me today because, one, I need to deal with these tough subjects, a broken heart, self-love. I need to deal with these things. I think that's a point in time where I started to learn that I could open myself up to this grief and then move on.
About 8 months after Adam died, I thought that I needed a little more support. And then I found the Evergreen group through that Wheat Ridge group. They had put out a notice that they were doing a special weekly group where they were working with writing and arts and crafts to help work through the grief feelings, and that really interested me, especially the writing, because I am a writer. And we did the writing exercise, and I was hooked. I really got into working with the materials, but also just the idea of what the Evergreen group was doing, I thought was so neat. I then got to know a lot of people in the group, and this Evergreen group has just been wonderful. I love the Evergreen group and the people that are in it.
I'm so glad we have our group and stuff. I don't know how people do this without groups or therapy. I'm doing it all and I'm still struggling. So I can't imagine people that don't do anything, like how isolating and awful that is, because this is a full-time fucking job for me. And sometimes you just need to talk. You don't need people to say, well, here's the solution. Well, here's, this and that. It's like, it's already done and over with, but sometimes you just need to say things.
The best thing to do for someone who's lost someone to suicide is just be there for them and just listen. Listen when they want to talk about their person.
I would try to encourage anyone to try to live life for their loved one who's no longer here. So not just finding a way to live for ourselves, but also to live a little extra for the life that no longer has that opportunity. I know when I'm out and about and I'm having a good day, or I'm really exerting myself on a hike or physical activity, I try to really live extra and give extra to that day and to that opportunity, because that was Roman.
There are still moments and times in which you've got to open yourself up to that pain, understand what it is, and then put it away and close the closet door, because it's always there. If you don't, you could get yourself in a world of hurt.
Would your loved one want you to be unhappy, troubled, burdened by this the rest of your life? And still, I ask that a lot of people, and still, I've never had somebody say yes. They say no. My loved one would want me to go on. I am very, very fortunate to have had that conversation with Emily. She told me herself, Dad, I want you to live your life. Don't feel bad because of me. People who worry that they think they're being disrespectful to their loved one because they're moving on, that's a sign of failure, or that you're not proving your love on a daily basis. And I think that that's not really right. I think that if we want to respect them, we take them with us and we continue our journey. Emily's not here, but I still have the things that I shared with her. I still have the lessons she taught. And nobody can take that away. I won't lose that. I miss her. I wish I could see her. I really do. But I know I can't. I won't. And I know she's in a safe place. This is what happened. And I'm still here. It's a beautiful day. I'm sitting with a friend. It's not that bad.
What I would say to someone who's feeling suicidal is, please be direct. Tell them that you need help, that you don't trust yourself, and make it known that this is a life or death situation, because sometimes when we're not the one who's in pain, we can't understand or grasp the level of pain that another person is in. The only other thing, I can't say how many days I wake up and whether there's a beautiful new fresh snow, or the sun is shining, or it's a beautiful sunset, and I think of how much my kid would be loving that moment. And so you just have to hold on until the next beautiful moment.
I think that's what happens a lot of times in these situations, is that they think we're going to be better without them, and we're not. Your people want you here. I would take him in any broken shape that he felt like he was, because that's better than where I am now.
What I would like someone that feels suicidal to know from my experience is there are tools and people out there that can help you. And I would like to even be the person that helps them if they would come to me, because just talking a lot really helps. We keep saying if you can keep them talking, maybe that really will help them to get through that time of real darkness. I certainly would try to help anyone that I could help get through those times.
You may be feeling that you're not enough, that you don't matter. You need to remember is that you do matter. If you're having thoughts that are telling you you're not good enough, your brain is lying to you. And you can use that higher part of yourself to observe your thoughts and say, this is just a thing that will pass. Things that have helped me to get out of those things: exercise, writing it down, telling someone. I talk to people that can handle that conversation. I find people that have been there themselves.
You, as one single person, can't judge how big your ripple is. You know, that's the thing about this club that we're in that nobody wants to be a part of, is you come into this room with us, you sit in our little circle, and we all feel the ripples.
Please talk to somebody. Please think of someone that you care about, and think that things could be different, because they can be. The person who loses a family member or loved one to suicide is affected forever. So please think about it. Get in touch with somebody.